Coming up on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto this week.
I ground it up, put it in my my little pre-rolled, and I am getting ready to smoke it.
That's West Texas Attorney General Sarah Stonger making a point in her home state of Texas.
We've got great law enforcement folks. Let's let them stay busy with the things that really matter. And if we want to protect kids, then we need to legalize, and we need to regulate it, and we need to tax it, and just like we do with alcohol.
And big business executives start to schmooze with President Trump about cannabis rescheduling, while a former DEA admin confirms the probability that it will happen. But when? A shocking prohibitionist initiative in Massachusetts, as the Bay State's GOP petitions the Attorney General on a ballot initiative to take back home grow and recriminalize possession. Hey, not in my backyard. No way. And after the New York Office of Cannabis Management screwed up the licensing process that has threatened the locations of over 100 dispensaries in that state, there is hope now. And can you grow cannabis hemp with zero THC? A company in Wisconsin says you can, plus an exclusive with NORML's political director Morgan Fox on the state of federal cannabis reform.
And that's just one factor of a much larger push to roll back some of the legislative wins that we've had, not just in Congress, but also around the country at the state level.
All that and our international reports and multiple state reports from coast to coast on Cannabis Coast to Coast News with Alaina Pinto. Next.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition. I'm Alaina Pinto. First of all, a huge thank you to all of our subscribers to our YouTube channel that is still named Pro Cannabis Media, but we are proud to announce that we have eclipsed the 16,000 mark of subscribers to our channel. And as you know, that is where the first release of this news show is live streamed on Mondays at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. But did you also know that this show is released 2 hours earlier on our app? If you want to be the first to access our content before we release it on YouTube, just download the PCM TV app, available for free at the Google Play or the App Store. And to make it even easier, you can scan that QR code on the screen and it will take you right there. First up this week, check out this TikTok video produced by a Republican West Texas district attorney named Sarah Stonger, who is proud to share that she is a mother, a proud Texan, a lawyer, and a small business owner, and she is also pro-cannabis.
I'm really tired of our elected officials not doing what's best for the people on the ground. Me, law enforcement on the ground, we've got real crimes to prosecute, right? We've got oil field theft, we've got rape, we've got murder. And right now, we really can't enforce the law as written on marijuana laws because of the testing requirements. I'm wanting to draw attention to help say, look, we've got great law enforcement folks. Let's let them stay busy with the things that really matter. And if we want to protect kids, then we need to legalize, and we need to regulate it, and we need to tax it, and just like we do with alcohol. So yeah, absolutely. The goal was to draw attention to an issue that I think maybe the traditional media hasn't been covering.
Her state of Texas continues to battle inside the State House in Austin over a hemp ban bill that is being championed by their Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick. And meanwhile, their governor, Greg Abbott, is calling for regulations, not a ban. Despite a special session in their legislature, they have yet to pass a law that would get their governor's signature. Right now, that state is more concerned with petty bipartisan politics. A protest by Democrat leaders who walked out of that special session and are now trying to stop redistricting plans by the state. If that realignment of voting districts goes through, it will galvanize even more Republican control in Texas. Another southern state that is looking to ban THC-infused products derived from hemp is Mississippi. Kerry Hinkle has our hemp report every week.
Hey everyone, this is Kerry Hinkle with Bayou City Hemp, back again for another hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This week, the first week of August, we are seeing more enforcement happen in another southern state, this time Mississippi. As of Wednesday this week, news reports have published that at least 45 stop order letters have been sent out from sheriff's departments around the state. Now, this one's being based off, like in other states, South Carolina, Arizona, Indiana, etc., where an attorney general opinion letter was published saying that hemp products that contain THC are illegal and should only be sold through medical marijuana dispensaries. And the intricate part in Mississippi here is that these letters state that the products have to be FDA approved. Otherwise, they're not allowed to be sold at major retail outlets. And the sticky point here is that the FDA doesn't approve or regulate hemp products, as we all know. In fact, multiple times since the 2018 Farm Bill passed, the FDA or their commissioner, both on record through their own channels and in hearings like last year before the House Oversight Committee, have stated that they don't have the ability to regulate hemp products and need Congress to tell them to do that. So reports on the ground in Mississippi is that these sheriff's offices are somewhat kind of going rogue based on an opinion letter, and that nothing in the statute is saying that these products are illegal. So we're seeing, one-off police forces in various counties decide to target some low-dose beverages at popular retail and grocery stores or smoke shop and vape shops selling high-dose, products that might have products that could be deemed appealing to children. And so the wide variety of products are now under scrutiny, given the vagueness that a hemp product would need to be approved by the FDA that, in fact, would never be able to approve it in the first place. And so, yet again, it's another complicated, convoluted state, and the legal gray ambiguity from the 2018 Farm Bill continues to cause headaches for local law enforcement and regulators, but this time in a state that many may not have expected, and that being Mississippi. So again, I'm Kerry Hinkle with another hemp report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'll see you next week.
The state of Delaware is off to a great start with legal adult use sales. In the first week of legal sales, just under $1 million of cannabis was sold in that teeny tiny state of Delaware. There are 14 dispensaries selling cannabis for adult use and medical patients. In the first weekend alone, $903,000 of product was sold. The biggest category, which does reflect the entire cannabis market, sold over 56% of flower. 26% in vapes, and edibles made up 14% of the total sales. Despite adult use, legal cannabis markets that are open in 24 states, one of the most successful markets is right here in Massachusetts. Last week, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts was celebrating passing the $8 million mark in adult use sales, and now there's a petition movement to take all of that away, including the right to grow at home. Late on Friday, the Attorney General of the Bay State, Andrea Campbell, announced that a group led by the Massachusetts GOP, Caroline Cunningham, is looking to petition the state for the right to pass an act to restore a sensible marijuana policy. They have petitioned the AG office to allow a ballot question that would change the existing laws here in the Bay State. And if the petition is granted, that group will have to collect 76,000 signatures necessary to get that act on the ballot for 2026. The medical laws would remain, but would have some minor changes to the limits allowed. We will start with our Bay State report with Curtis Emery, and then Jimmy Young has a one-on-one with Chris Faraone of Talking Joints Memo. Here's Curtis.
I'm Curtis Emery, a bud tender from Resonate in Worcester, Massachusetts, with the Bay State report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. In an ongoing story here in Massachusetts, the Commonwealth continues to pivot as the CCC cracks down on bad actors in the regulatory space. Following up a suit filed in June of this year, the CCC issued a PSA regarding cannabis products tested on the dates between April 1st, 2024 and April 15th, 2025. The PSA warns consumers that there is a high chance of contaminants, including mold and yeast, in those products, and that they should be reported to CCC immediately to check if the product in the consumer's hand should be a worry. Now, the CCC has set up a self-service kiosk where consumers can input pertinent data on their packaging to produce results, whether or not that product is safe to consume. Breaking news out of Massachusetts, as a Suffolk County sheriff was arrested Friday morning in Florida on extortion charges. The charges allege that Stephen Tompkins, age 67, while sheriff of the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, had extorted $50,000 from an undisclosed Boston-based cannabis company. Tompkins' relationship with this company started as early as 2019 when, in conjunction with the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department, entered a partnership with the cannabis company where guiding recent graduates from the Sheriff Department's reentry program to occupation at the cannabis company. Tompkins also purchased $50,000 worth of stock in the company. That stock rose quite a bit, and Tompkins saw a great return on his investment. However, after a sharp decline in stock value, Tompkins seemed to have lost it all. In return, Tompkins demanded that he get his $50,000 back. In fact, the company even cut him a check for $50,000 with loan repayment in the remittance. If found guilty, the sheriff will get up to 20 years in prison for these extortion charges. I've been Curtis Emery with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Chris Faraone is by far the number one journalist as far as covering the cannabis scene here in Massachusetts. I reached out to him as soon as I read his Talking Joints memo yesterday. If you don't subscribe, you should. So, Chris, first of all, did this guy go to the Jaceel Correa School of Extortion? And he was the Fall River mayor who's now in jail. So, I mean, are we ever going to learn?
The dispensary that he was allegedly shaking down appears to be Ascend, which is a New York-based multi-state operation. They have 3 dispensaries and a major grow in Massachusetts. Tompkins, and this is the saddest part of it, Tompkins was running a program through the Suffolk County Jail, that Suffolk County House of Correction that he runs, where basically they place people in jobs, of course. Now, every dispensary, every cannabis operation in Massachusetts has to have a plan, a community impact plan, right? Where they're saying, this is what we're doing in the community. Well, this dispensary, one of their plans, their big plan to give back was going to be to team up with Suffolk County, with the sheriff's office. Now, apparently they did. And, so then the sheriff allegedly comes looking for his piece of the pie. In fact, specifically, he wanted to get in on an IPO, an initial public offering for that company going public. But he ends up getting in on it, wires over $50,000 of his own money. The stock goes high, but then when it craters, because that's what happens, and there's a lot of other parts of the story, he loses his money. His stocks are worth less than $50,000. And what the Department of Justice is saying is that Tompkins then asked for the money back from them, and they're even showing us the checks that the company wrote for totaling $50,000. So it's like kind of, and this is like the worst kind of shakedown ever. It wasn't even for a profit. He started back at zero. It's like the saddest thing. He like sold out this program, sold out the people who voted for him, and didn't even make $1. This is Massachusetts graft at its absolutely least competent.
And this is, I guess, the time of year when people petition the Attorney General in Massachusetts for the right to go out and get signatures and get something on the ballot. And this woman, Caroline Cunningham, a member of the Massachusetts Republican Party, which, by the way, there aren't a lot of big people on that party, right?
The short list, but they have held the governor's seat. Not now, but they've had the governor's seat quite a few times in the past 20 years. So.
That's right. I get that, but that's all fine and dandy. That being said, what are the chances of this petition getting accepted by the AG, actually getting on the ballot and having the impact that it could have, which is getting rid of home grow and changing the laws that, have been in place now for 7 years?
Well, Jimmy, I'm no political expert. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, the first thing is, of course, this initiative process is why we have cannabis in Massachusetts in the first place. First decriminalization, 2008, followed 2012, medical marijuana, 2016, adult use. Here we are 9 years later, indicted sheriff and scandals galore, but I digress. So basically, there's 2 ballot initiatives filed by a member of the Republican Party in Massachusetts, known as the Mass GOP. And they're really very similar, but basically what they would do is completely wipe out the adult use program as we know it and leave a shell of a medical program. One of the options, I think option A, has also limitations on medical. So it wouldn't be that simple. But, this is kind of pie in the sky. I really don't know the specifics of, it's not like I'm reading this proposed initiative and seeing the legal snag as to why the Attorney General would reject this. With that said, I don't know. I know there's so much money wrapped up and everything in it. If they did move forward, if they did get approved to get to the next step, they'd have to get 75,000 signatures. Maybe there are some conservative parts of Massachusetts or I don't know, places where people are really sick of the smell of weed at this point, where they can get those. I don't think it would really be that easy. It would certainly cost a ton of money. It's never easy, even for things that are popular. I don't think this sounds so popular despite the troubles of mass cannabis. So I don't think, maybe it's more of a statement, but you never know. Maybe they're riding the wave of people really being sick of all of this, all these scandals.
In Washington, D.C. this week, there has been an attempt by multi-state operators to gain favor with the Trump White House. Like everything in politics, it's driven by money. There are multiple reports that some MSOs are contributing to the MAGA-backed Political Action Committee. And in this country, these are the kinds of contributions that lead to political policy change. One of the most respected leaders on cannabis strategy is Hirsch Jain, the founder of Ananda Strategy out of Los Angeles. Hirsch explained that it's in the best interest of the industry to curry favor with the current administration, and that favor was a $1 million donation to MAGA. The prohibitionist movement continues to galvanize not only here in the Bay State, but at the federal level as well. Last week, we showed you a commercial that was produced by Dr. Kevin Sebit's prohibitionist group called SAM, or Smart Approaches to Marijuana. In that spot, the producers urged President Trump to stop the rescheduling movement that was started by the previous administration led by President Joe Biden. If you remember correctly, it was a report from the Health and Human Services Department that concluded that cannabis should be taken off the most restrictive Schedule 1 of the Controlled Substances Act. The DEA managed to stop the momentum for that movement after the election of Donald Trump to the presidency. Executive producer Jimmy Young talked to NORML's political director, Morgan Fox, about the increase in prohibitionist propaganda coming out of Washington, D.C.
And that's just one factor of a much larger push to roll back some of the legislative wins that we've had, not just in Congress, but also around the country at the state level. Everything from attempts to create an adult use cannabis registry in Montana to efforts to prevent localities in Texas from decriminalizing cannabis, to attempts to recriminalize behavior that voters approved in Ohio, to attempts to ban access to botanical cannabis for patients in South Dakota. We're seeing these sort of things happen really across the country, and it's coming in conjunction with efforts at the federal level to restrict some of the protections that we have enjoyed for nearly a decade now. And that is also happening in conjunction with, I think, really a revived effort by prohibitionists in the media to exaggerate the harms associated with cannabis use, as well as with cannabis legalization and regulation policies.
We will be releasing that full Cannabis Coast to Coast interview and special report with Morgan and Jimmy on Thursday. But last week, we reported on the big mistake made by New York's Office of Cannabis Management when they granted licenses to over 100 retail dispensaries, even though their addresses were closer to schools than they were supposed to be. That oops might be voided if a state law that was introduced this week gets passed. That waiver would grandfather many of those legal dispensaries and not force them to shut down and move. This is one of the worst regulatory mistakes made in New York State, which now has more than 440 dispensaries. So now let's go to the West Coast to check in on California with Dina Nagib.
I'm Dina Nagib, Principal Consultant at Grass Goddess Consulting, here to give you the latest developments in California for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Following up on the ICE raid at Glasshouse Farms, in a statement issued by the company this week, they stopped working with 2 farm labor contractors who previously provided workers and have made significant changes to labor practices that are above and beyond legal requirements. In addition, Glasshouse hired compliance consultants, Guidepost Services, which is led by former director of ICE and Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, Julie Myers-Wood. They are helping improve policies for determining employment eligibility, including enhanced practices for verifying document validity and age gating. In other news, the Los Angeles City Council approved increases to fees for inspections, license renewals, and other requirements, which means tens to hundreds of thousands of dollars more in annual fees for cannabis businesses. These fees were approved to make up for declining tax revenue, but license holders do not have this money to spare. The fees are estimated to bring $6 million to the Department of Cannabis Regulation, which would cover the majority of its $8.6 million annual budget. But with businesses struggling and already not able to pay their taxes, will this just be another cost that operators can't actually cover? That's it for California News this week. I'm Dina Nagib from Grass Goddess Consulting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the A Block, our first section of this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast news. Next up, our international roundup with our trio of reporters in Europe and Canada. Plus, we will check in with the leader of the Women in Cannabis Expo scheduled for this week in Reno, Nevada. Cannabis Coast to Coast news continues after this.
We are so excited. We got picked up by the Reno Sparks Convention Center, and they welcomed us with open arms. So now we have a permanent home every August. We have a convention center that we can grow with, and they are excited to have us there with them.
Your cannabis business could be overpaying by hundreds of thousands of dollars in federal income taxes because of one simple assumption that you're making about your accountant. A dispensary owner in Colorado called me frustrated as hell. He'd been working with the same accountant for 3 years. His accountant said, "What's 471C?" Here's what the ignorance of that accountant was costing this business owner. $180,000 every single year for 3 years. 471C has been around since 2017. We're talking about an 8-year-old tax provision that many cannabis CPAs don't fully understand. 471C is one of the most complex and highly debated tax strategies in the cannabis industry. If you want to make sure you're not leaving any money on the table, I'm offering free 471C reviews this month. Link in the description.
Accounting Buds has grown into Buds Group, the same award-winning quality, now with more service offerings. Buds Group, your best buds in the biz.
Looking for PR that over-delivers on expectations? At Maverick Public Relations, they pair big agency experience with personalized attention. From launching award-winning brands to securing top-tier media hits, their data-driven communications team helps visionary leaders and entrepreneurs rise above the media noise. Maverick PR is responsive, collaborative, and relentless about results and ROI. Visit themaverickpr.com and make headlines together.
If you want to make history, if you want to be part of history, if you want to say you helped legalize marijuana in America, now is the time to join us.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the B Block, or second section of our show. I'm Alaina Pinto. We turn now to the international scene, and we start in Germany, where their medical program is facing some challenges as lawmakers are looking to rein in some existing regulations over video consults with patients. Later, Debbie Facey will look at her country's exports into Germany and if that market slows down, what impact that might have on exports from Canada. We start with Ben Stevens, who takes a look at what is going on in France.
I'm Ben Stevens, the editor of Business of Cannabis, with this week's report from Europe for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Just months ago, France's long-running effort to establish a permanent medical cannabis framework was on the brink of collapse. Years of delays, political turmoil, and the dissolution of the National Assembly in 2024 had left the country's 2019 pilot in limbo. But in March this year, the government submitted 3 detailed proposals to the EU, a surprise turnaround that could put France back on course as a model for medical cannabis regulation across Europe. Industry analysts say the new system is serious, pharmaceutical, and built to reduce stigma, improve access, and avoid mistakes seen in other countries. Unlike Germany, France will integrate cannabis into its existing pharmaceutical framework, initially allowing only oils, capsules, and sealed vaporizers, not raw flower, to make prescribing easier for doctors and more attractive to cannabis-naive patients. The proposals have now cleared an initial EU review and are under examination by France's State Council. Once approved, they'll need sign-off from the Health and Economy ministries before being published into law. In parallel, the HAS, France's health authority, is consulting patients, doctors, and industry on pricing, reimbursement, and prescriber training, with a final decision expected in early 2026. The framework is deliberately strict. Initial prescriptions will come from hospital specialists or doctors in dedicated centres before patients are transferred to GPs for ongoing care. Around 2,000 to 3,000 trained healthcare professionals are already in place, a much stronger starting base than many countries. For businesses, there is no cannabis-only route into the market. Producers will need to partner with a registered French pharmaceutical operator, meaning full narcotics and pharma regulations. That can make entry costly, but analysts believe it will also encourage innovation in products and delivery methods. If implemented as planned, the French system could generate over 800 million euros a year by 2035, and, as its authors argue, offer Europe a durable, exportable model for medical cannabis regulation for future countries. That's all for this week. I'm Ben Stevens, the editor of Business of Cannabis, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
I'm Dave Barton from Thermador with your UK Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. A new proposal by the UK government would see medical cannabis patients paying an additional 20% in VAT for clinic fees. As part of a measure being considered to raise billions for the National Health Service, the NHS, UK Chancellor Rachel Reeves is under pressure to remove the VAT exemption charge for private healthcare. However, this tax would not be levied against private hospitals that are used by the NHS. If successful, these new changes would come into effect following the autumn budget later this year. A new report by the Care Quality Commission, the CQC, shows that private medical cannabis prescriptions rose 130% in 2024, year on year, from 2023. While the increase in unlicensed CBPMs reflects a growing trend, it's largely thought to correlate with the growing difficulty in obtaining an NHS prescription for CBPMs, which is currently less than 5 per month. This is further compounded by the difficulties many people face in obtaining doctor's appointments, as well as an uptick in NHS referrals to private clinics. That's all for this week's UK Report. I'm Dave Barton from Thermador, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Now back here in the United States, there are many states that are actively trying to control, regulate, or outright ban THC-infused products derived from hemp. The Farm Bill of 2018 created a legal definition of hemp of 0.3% of THC in dry weight. Now the federal government is trying to reel in that loophole that created the unregulated hemp market that is booming with few exceptions. There is talk in Washington, D.C. about new laws that would change the amount of THC allowed for the legal growth and use of hemp in beverages and other products. Some proposals are looking at what would be a quantifiable amount of THC that would be allowed in hemp. And now there is a company in Wisconsin that reports they have developed THC-free hemp. Herbal Aspects out of Madison claims they have developed a strain called Badger G that has 0 THC and is high on CBG, the so-called mother of all cannabinoids. This strain is being developed in conjunction with researchers from the University of Wisconsin at Madison. It is still 3 to 4 months away from being introduced into the market, but so far tests are encouraging that this strain might hold the answer to states that are looking to outright ban THC products derived from hemp. That company claims that consumers who will use Badger G will not test positive for THC. Of course, the full strain is CBD and CBG, 2 cannabinoids that show promise, with its anti-inflammatory effects that help with some neurodegenerative disorders such as Huntington's disease and glaucoma. Wisconsin is one of those states that still has strict laws prohibiting cannabis, but is allowing hemp-derived items to be sold. Right next to Wisconsin is Michigan, and that's where Amie Carter reports from every week. Here's Amie.
I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters, presenting this week's Michigan Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Let's dive in. Michigan's affordable and legal cannabis is transforming its border towns into thriving hubs for weed tourism. New Buffalo, located on the Indiana and Illinois border, has become particularly popular with numerous dispensaries opening. Customers from neighboring states where cannabis is either illegal or significantly more expensive are flocking to these shops, making New Buffalo Township one of the largest sellers of recreational cannabis in the country. This surge in sales is generating substantial revenue for the town and local property owners. In Utica, a new cannabis destination is set to open, offering a one-stop shop for enthusiasts. The Bodega Dispensary, described as a culturally inspired corner store, will feature a variety of products from top brands. Adjacent to it, the Burn One Consumption Lounge, which will be Macomb County's first licensed space, providing a welcoming environment for individuals to enjoy their purchases legally. Marvin Kesey aims to create a community-driven gathering place where people can connect, share stories, and feel at home. Lastly, mark your calendars for the Zara Abbas Memorial Bridge Walk during Labor Day weekend. I spoke with Ryan Bringold, who provided some more details about the event.
Be sure to join us August 31st and September 1st for the annual Mackinac Bridge Walk. We'll be hosting a barbecue in the Michilimack Colonial Park, right behind the lighthouse. Be there at 4:20 on Sunday. Get up early Monday morning because we meet at the Trailhead Pavilion, hand out shirts, and everybody walks. When you're done with your walk, come on back and we're gonna have refreshments, great stories, and just a good family feel. Enjoy your weekend and be sure to make it up for the Bridge Walk.
That's it for this week. I'm Amie Carter with Michigan Weedsters for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
There's another news item out of Michigan this week, and it has to do with the first license given to a native tribe in that state. There are 12 federally recognized tribes in Michigan, but it's the Bay Mills Indian community that has been given a permit to the Northern Light Cannabis Company to commence operations. With more on developments from the tribal community around the country and in Nevada, here's...
I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies, and this is the Nevada and Tribal Nations Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Michigan has signed its first ever tribal state cannabis compact, inked on July 25th between the Cannabis Regulatory Agency and the Bay Mills Indian community. This historic agreement enables Bay Mills Northern Light Cannabis Company to operate fully within Michigan's adult use cannabis market, gaining access to statewide wholesale and retail channels, oversight under the metric seed-to-sale tracking system, and adherence to the same compliance, testing, and inspection standards as all other licensed operators. It also introduces a cooperative model that respects tribal sovereignty while ensuring regulatory fairness and consumer safety. Michigan has 12 federally recognized tribes, including several that have said they want to pursue similar compacts that will see tribal cannabis legally sold throughout the state. In 2023, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer signed 2 bills that allow Native American tribes and the state to form compacts to regulate and tax marijuana. Congratulations to the Michigan tribes. Air Wellness, a major multi-state cannabis operator, is undergoing a comprehensive restructuring process after mounting debt pressures. $358 million is due in 2026. Under a restructuring support agreement with senior note holders, the company will sell off or wind down assets in several states, including Nevada, while lenders may take over some assets and extend a $50 million bridge loan to support operations. What are the implications to Nevada? Air informed Nevada officials on July 30th that it will close 2 cultivation facilities located in Sparks, Nevada. One operating under Kind Cannabis Company, employing and impacting 77 people. Another facility, Nevada Green, affected an additional 5 workers. These closures are part of a broader restructuring and sell-off plan. Earlier, AIR had already shuttered its Ponderosa manufacturing facility and subleased its earlier medical cultivation site in Nevada. That's it for the Nevada highlights and tribal nations. I'm Tina Tasaka with 420 Technologies and Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
The state of Washington continues to see a decrease in sales. Even though it's one of the oldest adult use markets, over the past few years, revenues have decreased. According to the Washington Liquor and Cannabis Board, the total sales of cannabis products in that state have declined over the past 5 years. The control board believes that this downward trend in sales has been caused by oversupply that has driven prices down to the point where revenue has retracted to pre-pandemic levels. Only $277 million of product was sold in the first quarter of this year, nearly $100 million less than in 2021. That's when sales peaked during the second year of the pandemic. No such issue in Virginia, where the legacy market is booming, but that market took a hit this past week with a big bust. And Joe Parsons has the details.
I'm Joe Parsons with the Virginia Cannabis Connection by Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV, and reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Even though Virginia was the first southern state to fully legalize cannabis for both medical and recreational use, the prohibitionist stance of the current administration in the Commonwealth has stalled the implementation of the adult use program. Now, that's led to legacy black market operations, dangerous products, and one of the biggest cannabis trafficking operations that has ever been in the Commonwealth is almost finally resolved. Lux Auto Sales and Rental in Newport News, Virginia, was the subject of a 2-year investigation that led to uncovering a huge cannabis trafficking operation, and Lux was the East Coast connection. Between 2017 and 2023, they ran a scheme that used commercial flights to shuttle millions in cash to California and brought back hundreds of pounds of cannabis to Virginia in return. The operation revealed that about 1,000 pounds of cannabis a week was being moved during this operation. 37 people were charged, 31 pled guilty, 17 are already sentenced, ranging from probation all the way to 15 years. Now, there's one more trial that's pending in the Newport News District Court for the end of this month. There will also still be one suspect that's still at large after all this time. Now, this case is a stark reminder of how a safe and fair adult use cannabis market would make operations like this way less profitable and help dissolve the legacy cannabis market that keeps harmful, untested products in the streets of the Commonwealth. Now, all we can do is hope that the coming governor will enact the will of the people and start a safe and fair adult use market. Lastly, I'd like to thank Marianne Kersagi from Alibi Cannabis for being our guest this week on Coffee Talk. Her story was truly inspiring, and it was awesome to hear how she took her small craft cannabis grow to the now award-winning brand that it is today. Tune in every Monday at 4:20 and check it out on 3WV.com. Well, that's going to do it for this week from Higher Education's Coffee Talk, sponsored by 97.5 3WV, and reporting for WPCM TV's Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Joe Parsons. Until next time, stay lifted.
Hi, I'm Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Ohio has officially hit its first legal year of adult use cannabis. We've achieved $702 million in sales. Those expected we'd actually hit $1 billion. However, if you remember, we have 135 cities with moratoriums or bans for the next year or so. But despite that, Death Row Records Cannabis is partnering with Pure Ohio, and their products will be available soon in Dayton and London, with a broader outreach coming out on August 10th to all the Ohio other products. So we're still seeing some movement. We've got a break for the summer when it comes to legislation. Let's hope everything turns out good. I am Christina Brisson with Over the Top Renovations with your weekly Ohio Cannabis Report with Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Next up, Maryland, where adult use sales has been legal for 2 years. And now there are reports that young people are getting access to the plant medicine, and educators are worried about the impact it might have on the development of their students. Here's Christopher Bright with more.
I'm Christopher Bright from The Enlightened Voice. Welcome to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'll be bringing you the latest cannabis headlines from Maryland. 2 years after Maryland legalized recreational cannabis, revenue is up and possession arrests are down, but health experts and educators are sounding the alarm about its impact on kids. Many teens now see cannabis as less risky, with some showing up to school high. According to Baltimore County Councilman and teacher David Marks, he has noticed a pervasive smell of marijuana in schools, which he says harms academic success. Studies warn that adolescent cannabis use can impair brain development, affecting memory, coordination, and emotional health. A survey found many Maryland teens believe that their peers are using more since legalization, often getting cannabis from unregulated sources, which may contain harmful contaminants. School resource officers report a slight uptick in student use, especially vaping. While educators feel limited in addressing off-campus use, community efforts like expanded after-school programs and safer public spaces are helping reduce the substance abuse. And now we have our content creator of the week. I would like to shine a spotlight on Shannon, aka the Stone Sommelier. Shannon has been making waves in the Maryland cannabis market. She has worked with companies like District Cannabis, Evermore Cannabis, and Culta, creating captivating marketing campaigns. Shannon blends the glam of marketing with the comfort that is cannabis. From meteorologist to trimmer to marketing executive, she has levels of depth. Make sure to check her out on her IG and TikTok at The Stone Sommelier. And that's all for this week's Maryland Cannabis Report. I'm Christopher Bright from The Enlightened Voice, reported for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
That'll do it for the B Block, but we have one more segment for you, and that will include a wild story from Kentucky where medical sales are getting closer to a start. The question now is, did that state government import their first plants from out of state? There's evidence that a don't ask, don't tell policy may have opened the door for the state's first batch of plants that were delivered in violation of interstate commerce. Cannabis Coast to Coast News continues after this.
What if we're right? What if all of a sudden they discovered that there is medical use for marijuana and that it is good for you and it's better than alcohol and it's better than opioids and it helps your health? What if we're right? What if they find that out?
Specific cannabinoids have medical value. These are facts.
I'm here today in hopes to assist in removing the demonized stigma of cannabis and the perception that cannabis is just about getting high. The true base of this plant has to be known.
I don't think anybody should ever go to jail for cannabis. Get some medicine, and everybody should have access to it.
This is something which, at the very, very least, is the key to alleviating suffering and extending life for millions of human beings. Right? For returning some kind of balance to our society. And quite possibly of restoring our planet's natural balance as well.
Welcome back to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is the C Block, or final section of our program this week. I'm Alaina Pinto. This is also the last reminder to download the PCM TV app. All you have to do is scan or point to your smartphone camera at the QR code on the screen, and it will take you right to our app. Or, you can just search it on Google Play or in the App Store. Just make sure you leave the space between PCM and TV. First up in the C Block, we check in on Alabama with Jennifer Boozer.
I'm Jennifer Boozer Stewart, reporting from Alabama for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Everyone knows that Alabama's favorite pastime is football. Unfortunately, we have a story today about an Auburn football player that no one will want to cheer about. Auburn freshman tight end Hollis Davidson III was arrested in Georgia on a felony charge of possession of a Schedule I controlled substance. The arrest occurred on July 28th, one day before Auburn players reported to preseason camp. According to an Auburn spokesperson, Davidson has been suspended from the team for a violation of team rules. He was with the team at the beginning of a preseason camp, but limited in practice due to an injury. According to the arrest report, Davidson was found to be in possession of a THC vape and an unspecified amount of loose marijuana on June 19th. Davidson was contacted by the officer at the scene when he was found loitering at a closed business near a black golf cart. According to the report, Davidson placed an item inside the golf cart, and the officer reported smelling the odor of marijuana, constituting probable cause for a search. The vape was sent to a lab for testing and tested positive for Delta-9 concentrate of 1.42%, the report said. A warrant was issued for Davidson's arrest on July 26th. He was booked into the Fayette County Jail on July 28th, and bail was set at $5,000. Davidson was a four-star recruit in Auburn's 2025 signing class, joining Ryan Gee as one of two tight end signees. He becomes the third Auburn player to have been arrested in July, joining DJ Barber, who was arrested on marijuana trafficking charges, and Malcolm Simmons, who was arrested on charges unrelated to cannabis. I'm Jennifer Boozer Stewart, reporting from Alabama for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
I am Kimmie Cannabis from Canna Talk About It with the Oklahoma Cannabis Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Oklahoma, the clock is now ticking. We have until November 4th to collect at least 173,000 valid signatures for State Bill 837, and we're aiming for 300,000 to make sure it lands on the 2026 ballot. This measure would legalize adult use cannabis in our state. From the 788 OGs who started this movement to rural dispensary owners, small town supporters, and big city businesses, the cannabis community is standing shoulder to shoulder. Volunteers are bundling packages, 30 sheets each, 9 signature lines per sheet, and fanning across Oklahoma. Every signature matters. Every sheet counts. The owner of the Far Side say they're confident that we will crush the numbers needed, but here's the truth. We can't do it without you. The team at ORCA, Oklahoma's for Responsible Cannabis Action, needs more volunteers, more boots on the ground, and yes, more donations to make this happen. You can step up at orca4ok.com. This isn't just about policy. It's about people. It's about watching strangers become teammates and communities unite around a plant that was always meant to bring us together. Right now, from the Panhandle to Tulsa, from Oklahoma City to the smallest rural towns, we are proving that unity is our strongest tool. So let's sign, let's volunteer, let's show up, and let's make adult use cannabis a reality in Oklahoma. I'm here for it. That's all for the Oklahoma Cannabis Report. Peace, love, and all that good stuff.
This week in Reno, Nevada, there's a 2-day exposition focused on breaking the stigma in cannabis. In this case, it's also a celebration of women in the business who have developed into business leaders, researchers, and advocates for the wellness benefits of the plant. Brooke Westlake is the driving force behind the Women in Cannabis Expo, and she talked with our executive producer, Jimmy Young, about what attendees can expect.
Thanks, Alaina. I'm so excited to welcome back Brooke Westlake to the pro-cannabis media family and her first time appearance on Cannabis Coast to Coast News. She is the organizer and the person who put this whole Women in Cannabis Expo together after a few years off. She's back. And best of all, Brooke, you have a permanent location now for your event. That's a huge win for anybody who's running an event.
We are so excited. We got picked up by the Reno Sparks Convention Center, and they welcomed us with open arms. So now we have a permanent home every August. We have a convention center that we can grow with, and they are excited to have us there with them.
Why not? You exude excitement wherever you go. So tell me what people can expect going to the Women in Cannabis Expo next week, right?
Yeah, so what they can expect is now that we have a permanent home, we're able to build out our shows that are always going to be a 2-day event. We're always going to have 12 panel discussions. So 6 panels on one day, 6 panels on the next, 12 speakers, 6 speakers on one day, 6 speakers on the next. And then, of course, we end our show with our amazing annual Network Mixer Award ceremony. And this year, fun fact, we had the most nominations for women we've ever had. We had over 138 nominations of women in cannabis. We are giving out 66, yes, I said 66 awards for women in cannabis this year at our amazing networking award ceremony that we do. It's a 2-hour event. We have Senator Jackie Rosen's office coming. We have the Chamber of Commerce in cannabis coming, as well as the Reno Sparks Chamber of Commerce to do a traditional ribbon ceremony cutting. And then we also have a keynote speaker that will be there. And then we're giving out 66 awards. So we're very, very excited about that to recognize all these women and their hard work, acts of service in the cannabis space.
And are women taking more of a leadership role in this industry right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. Since I've been away and stepped back into the limelight, I have seen a massive shift, and we have some power houses of women that are taking on CEOs, CFOs, entrepreneurial new business roles. And the lineup of women that we have is absolutely incredible. We have some amazing award sponsors, Bebo. We have some great companies that have come to the table to just really highlight what we're doing. Beard Bros has said, hey, what do you need? We love you guys. We're so glad you're back. How can we support you? And so, yes, I have seen a shift. That is correct.
There you go. And Beard Brothers is everywhere. They're good people, and I'm glad they're supporting you. Brooke Westlake, I wish you the best of luck with your Women in Cannabis Expo, and we look forward to more appearances of you on our Cannabis Coast to Coast news show. You know you're always welcome here.
There's news out of Illinois this week that the state's Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity will be releasing $40 million in funds available to help out some of the licensees who are struggling to survive. With more from that state, here's our Chicago clone guy, Mark Allen.
What's up, everybody? I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago clone guy, reporting from just outside of Chicago, Illinois, for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is Bird. Thanks for tuning in. Interesting news out of Decatur, Illinois, which is kind of southwestern, actually central southwest Illinois. The whole public school system has made a new rule effective July 1st that any student that smells like marijuana, cannabis, has to call their parents, and their parents have to bring them a new set of clothes home. Or they have to go home and get a new set of clothes that don't smell like marijuana cannabis. While at the same time, the teachers and everybody else showing up every day smelling like cigarettes and or booze. I know a ton of teachers and they like to party. But anyways, that clearly drew a lot of criticism for that. Other rules in place that any parents that show up to the school smelling like cannabis, marijuana, will be asked to leave. Any visitors that show up for any reason that smell like cannabis will be asked to leave. But you can smell like cigarettes and alcohol, but you can't smell like weed. So clearly this has been getting some pushback at the Decatur public school systems. I feel bad for the parents that actually work in the cannabis industry and kind of smell like it all the time or just enjoy it a little bit. But anyways, Decatur, figure your stuff out. And in side news, it's not Illinois, but one of our neighbors that we connect to, the southern tip of southern Illinois to Kentucky, has made medical cannabis legal, and they have commercial medical grows going now. So just wanted to give a little shout out to Kentucky. I don't think we have anybody reporting there, but Kentucky is now doing medical cannabis, and that's our neighbor. So I know people from Kentucky were coming to Illinois to pick up. Maybe now people in Illinois will go to Kentucky to pick up. But we'll see. But anyways, that's the news for Illinois and the surrounding areas. I'm Mark Allen, the Chicago clone guy, reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
Now it's time to check in on the publicly traded stocks in the cannabis space. So is it a good time to dive in or to resist the urge to buy some of these stocks at a bargain price. Here's our man, Doug Miller, who is high on Wall Street.
I'm Doug Miller from High on Wall Street with this week's Cannabis Stock Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News. Canopy Growth Corporation posted its Q1 results, reporting a loss of 14 cents per share, slightly better than the expected 15 cents per share, and a big improvement from last year's 37-cent loss. That's an earnings surprise of 6.67%. Revenue came in at $52.13 million, topping estimates by nearly 9% and up from $48.39 million a year ago. But it's not all green for Canopy Growth. The stock has dropped over 61% year to date compared to the S&P 500's 7.8% gain. And the company's only beaten earning expectations once in the past 4 quarters. So all eyes will be on Canopy's management for signs of a turnaround. Now let's look at the stock chart and see how that's doing. It's trading around $1.25, and it did jump up on them earnings report, and it wants to run up some more, so be sure to lock in profits on the way up and trade smart. And that's this week's Cannabis Stock Report. Reporting for Cannabis Coast to Coast News, I'm Doug Miller.
Now that the Minnesota cannabis market is starting to open up, there are many trade shows that are scheduled to make a stop in that state. One of those is Canna Con, one of the oldest traveling trade shows in this country. This past weekend, they made a stop in St. Paul, Minnesota. And Canna Con has been traveling around the United States since 2014 when they organized their first one in Washington state. Alysha Bellamy is our new Minnesota correspondent, and she has an update on the legal launch in that state.
I'm Alysha Bellamy with Cannabis Coast to Coast News. This is your Minnesota edition. I'm also a part of the Minnesota Cannabis College and Herbs and Herbs. Today we're going to be talking about Jacob Schlaker out of Albert Lea, Minnesota. He lost a decision 3-4 for his dispensary, The Smoking Tree. They said they don't want any cannabis in their community. He is going to appeal the city council's decision, and I'll keep you updated on what happens next. We also have Josh Wilkin Simon. He is out of Duluth, Minnesota, where he hopes to open his dispensary. He also owns the Legacy Cup and Legacy Glass, which are very big pillars of cannabis in the Minnesota community. We also have our Green State Awards, where Minnesota did so well. We got first place with Bloom Magazine for best publication. And we also want to give a big round of applause to Green Elevator, where they won best hemp beverage and also best gummy. Thank you so much for tuning in to Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I am Alysha Bellamy.
If you are looking for a weekend getaway to a location that is on the ocean and has a friendly cannabis culture, you might want to check out Atlantic City, New Jersey. They now have 2 social consumption lounges that are open for business. And Jill Goldsberry has more in her Garden State Cannabis Report.
Bill Goldsberry here with Coast to Coast Cannabis News and WPCM TV with the New Jersey Report. I'm here to tell you about what's going on in cannabis this week. In New Jersey, we have the New Jersey Cannabis Regulatory Commission has decided that they're going to investigate the levels of mold and THCA in the current cannabis stock. Because they're finding that the levels are fishy. They want to know what's going on, so they've launched an investigation. Christopher Riggs, the acting director of the CRC, has said that they are going to start an investigation because the levels have gone up in the last few months, and they want to know why this is happening. In other news in Jersey cannabis, we have a first look at Sunny Tien, one of the latest cannabis lounges that opened in Atlantic City this past month. So take a look at that. You can see how people are sitting, what they're doing. You're allowed to actually smoke cannabis in the lounge with no problem. It's amazing, I know, in Atlantic City. And also, we have the opening of Lady L, a first look there. Lady L Dispensary in Jersey City on the west side at 547 West Side Avenue. Very community-based dispensary, women owned, and they sell things like merch, like what I'm wearing right now, this really comfortable t-shirt. Thank you so much for the shirt. And they also sell gift ideas from companies that are women owned as well. And you can find the beautiful space located, as I said, on Westside Avenue. It's curated. The art has been commissioned by local artists. So next time you're in Jersey City, take a look at Lady L. And if you're in Atlantic City, check out Sunny Tian and let us know what you think. I'm Jill Goldsberry with Cannabis Coast to Coast News for WPCM TV. Thanks for watching.
Kentucky and Ohio are two states that share a border separated by the Ohio River. Ohio's adult use program celebrated its 1-year anniversary of opening adult sales this past weekend. And Christina Brisson has been keeping an eye on the legislative battle there, which continues to try and change some of the existing laws. Now it's Kentucky that is about to launch its new medical program. And this past week, there was a little controversy over where and how the first plants available to be harvested got into that state. You see, each legal state can only sell and grow plants from inside their own borders. But in Kentucky, they have a don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to the launch of their medical program.
This is Robin Alford bringing you the Kentucky Cannabis Report. Last week, I reported that Mayfield, the armory there, had received their first shipment of plants. And nobody knows where they came from. And Kentucky has a don't ask, don't tell policy. So they really can't ask where the plants came from. So nobody's saying. And the hemp farmers are a little upset about that because they said they could have gotten the product on the shelf a lot sooner than the October, November shelf date they're shooting for. And yeah, I can understand that, but you know, I looked through the regulations last night and hemp farmers are really not allowed to grow it for some reason. Everything for Kentucky, this is Robin Alford with the Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And finally, a sad note from the cannabis industry that lost two advocates with completely different backgrounds. One is 62-year-old Richard Lee, who is paralyzed for years, but still managed to be the founder of Oaksterdam University out of Oakland, California. That school is one of the premier educational institutions in the cannabis industry. And the other advocate is Major League Baseball Hall of Famer Ryne Sandberg. In 2021, he became a spokesperson and a brand ambassador for multi-state operator Verilife. The former Chicago Cubs All-Star was battling prostate cancer at the time. When asked about his cannabis experience, Sandberg explained, quote, "I really didn't know anything about it. I didn't have any interest in it. And now it's every day sometimes, as I'm looking for something to take the edge off," unquote. Rest in peace, Ryne Sandberg, one of baseball's all-time great players. That will do it for this edition of Cannabis Coast to Coast News. I'm Alaina Pinto, and remember, it's a whole new world of cannabis out there, so consume responsibly, and we'll see you next week.
I think I messed up. Did you know there's a place that covers all the cannabis news you need? Pro Cannabis Media is now WPCM TV, your go-to website for things cannabis. WPCM TV is the CNBC of weed, bringing you the latest news you need.
Amie Carter. This week, she reports from inside the State House in Lansing.
I'm Amie Carter from Michigan Weedsters with this week's Michigan Report for Cannabis Coast to Coast News.
And talk shows about all things cannabis.
Well, thank you, and thank you for all you're doing to get the word out. Like, this show is so important.
It all started back in 2018 when Emmy award-winning talk show host Jimmy Young kicked it off with the In the Weeds podcast.
That it's not just any generic paper towel. You do have a brand that you use, right?
Yeah, we live or die by the bounty. I mean...
The quicker picker-upper! I love that!
His mission? Building an army of multimedia journalists and podcast hosts who are documenting the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. Fast forward to today, and we've got the nation's only weekly cannabis coast-to-coast news program with Alaina Pinto.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Cannabis Coast to Coast News, WPCM TV's weekly production of the fight to end cannabis prohibition in this country and around the world. I'm Alaina Pinto.
Delivering the nation's only TV news-style program. Since June 2021, WPCM TV has racked up over 1.3 million views, with 17 million impressions, and picked up over 16,000 subscribers on YouTube alone. Now we even have our own app. For more information, contact the team at WPCMTV.com